what you talked a little bit about your your ideology behind mastering. Like, can you kind of just sum that up for us a little bit? Like, what does being a mastering engineer mean to you, and what do you feel like is your job when you get a song to master?
Um, I mean, I think these days it's like really giving my opinion of how I think it should sound. It's like so even the, bigger mixers will like be like, "Hey, what does this sound like?"
Nick, my first question to you is, I'm always big on like inspiration and kind of knowing the backstory. So I would really love to know like what inspired you to get into mastering or even just music. Like what series of events led you to this place where you are today?
Yeah, so I mean, ever since I can remember, like my dad was singing and playing guitar to like me and my little brother. And like some of my earliest memories were him just he like always had a setup. And obviously is from a different time, but his like he's still to this day he's in his mid 60s, and he just always has like a guitar set up and a ton of guitars, and he's really into that. That's honestly like how I got into music, or at least the love for it. But his dad um, was also one of the early pioneers of digital music. Like he went to the first digital music conference in like 1974 in Australia. So my dad's dad, my grandpa, always had a studio as well, and like his studio looked like yours looks a little bit better and way more modern than his, but he had just like shit all over. Like it was keyboards up and down and all the racks and mixers and everything. And they're both from Bolivia. So like the music he makes is all like, South American. It's how it sounds. It's like when I tell you that, that's how it sounds like. Um, but he was doing it all digitally, using MIDI and, like all the old school ways of doing things digitally. Like that's what they were doing. And then my other grandpa, he was also like an avid singer, and he like sang in all, like his big thing was like singing in the church choir. And so like it's in both sides of the family, the musical background.
Yeah.
So when I was like 12 years old, my friends, I'm from the Bay Area, and my friends started, like they all started rapping, and I was like, well, like I don't really see myself doing that, but like where's my part in this shit? And so I was like trying to find my part in the music thing, because I knew I wanted to make music. I was like really big into art, and it was like drawing and painting back then. But then when I found it was actually Fruity Loops, and it was like Fruity Loops. It
Yeah.
wasn't like FL2 or
Right.
any. It was like the very first version of Fruity Loops. I downloaded the demo, and I was at my friend's house, and I like had downloaded it on his computer, and I started opening up the demo songs,
Yeah.
and I was like, "Holy shit! Like, how did they make it?" And I was like muting channels and like soloing channels, and so that got me into like producing, and I actually started producing, and making beats, because that's what I wanted to do. Like my friends were rapping, I was going to make beats, and so like the natural progression was like making beats, and then like, all right, now we got to record, because like the beats made. So I was like recording all these people, and like at that time, like my studio started to look like my grandpa's studio. I had all the keyboards and just anything I could pile into there. It didn't matter what it was. If it was like a new piece of gear, I'd be like, yeah, I'll take that from wherever, pawn shops,
Yeah.
garage sales, anything. I was just like trying to stack the gear up.
Yeah.
And like before I knew it, like I was like really producing. And there was a time, it was actually in my 20s, like I had been like making, rap and that type of stuff, from like my early teens into my 20s, and then I crossed over into making electronic music.
Hmm.
And electronic music was where I really got to learn and like experiment. with sound design and engineering, and I found that they were all like interwoven down from like signal input, right? Whatever I'm recording, whatever samples I'm selecting, like impacted the quality. How I mixed those samples impacted the quality, and then how I mastered the samples, like in whatever instrumentation I was playing or whatever I did, like everything was all interwoven, everything was tied together.
Yeah.
And around this time, my friends started, like all those friends that were like rapping, they had like started mixing, and I came to this next crossroads in my music life where I was like, well, if they're all mixing, like what's my, where do I fit into this? I didn't really feel like mixing. Like I'm good at it, like it's a natural thing for me. um but it didn't seem like if everyone else was mixing, like I didn't want to mix, if everyone else is. So it came to be like, well, I guess I'm going to master, and I started like buying up mastering gear. And the reason I started buying up mastering gear on top of that was I was sending out my electronic music to get mastered, and I would pay like a lot of money. It was like my whole paycheck at the time, right?
Yeah.
To get my records mastered, and I would get the master back, and I would be like, oh, okay, it sounds cool, but like it's not bright anymore. And I would hit them back up, and I'd be like, can you make it brighter? And I'd get it back, and it like wouldn't, like it didn't seem like it had changed at all,
Yeah.
and I was like, well, like, can we like get this right? And and this happened multiple times with multiple mastering engineers, where they were like, oh yeah, well, that's like as good as it's going to sound. Like if you want mix tips for next time, like, I'll give you mix tips or whatever.
Right.
And I was like, okay. And so I would like jump to the next mastering engineer, pay my whole paycheck to have them get it mastered.
Mm-hmm.
And eventually it got to the point where like my friends were mixing, and I didn't like what was coming back to me with my own stuff. And I started buying mastering gear. And I was like, well, I'm gonna figure it out. It can't be like, I saw everyone have like these big setups and stuff, and I was like, can't be that hard. I just need to like start buying the gear. And so I like was like doing the same thing that I've always done, which is like I was working the job, and instead of taking all my money to pay for mastering, I was taking all my money and saving it to pay for mastering gear now, right?
Yeah.
And so that's literally how my mastering studio started. It was like buying up one piece of gear, mastering for free, and then people being like, oh, that sounds great, like can you master this other thing for me? And when there was like enough demand, it was like, oh, maybe I should charge for mastering.
Right.
And so I just started charging, and then
And
fast forward to now, and yeah.
yeah, that seems like a natural path. I know a lot of us, especially a lot of the engineers I talk to, they started out because maybe they were artists, and they couldn't access a studio, or they didn't like the thing that was happening at the studio, so they, decided to record themselves, and that grew into an engineering career, and and a lot of things. Same with maybe producer. I can't find the right beats, I'm gonna make the beats myself. So like a lot of the times, like what we do is out of necessity, and it's kind of similar to me, except it was a little different. I actually was chasing that rap career in the beginning of,
Yeah.
as a kid, and my mom was like, well, she was telling me as I graduated high school, you can't make a career out of rap. And I'm like, yeah, I probably can't, especially with this stage fright thing that I had going on. So I'm like, all right, how can I still be in music? And so I started to learn about recording and mixing. So that's kind of
Yeah,
what.
you found a niche, and you found something like an untapped market,
Yeah.
and like exploited your untapped market.
Exactly, because that is rapping. Everybody's a rapper. It's saturated right now.
Mhm.
But and I see, like you said you thought the same thing about being a mix engineer. Everybody's mixing. Let me jump off into something like mastering, where something that seems a little bit more niche down. So, and I love that you thought to yourself that it couldn't be this hard, right? Like people are doing it, I can do it. That's a great attitude to have about anything that you approach in life. Is that you can do it. Like, hey, if other humans are doing it, why wouldn't I be able to do it, right? So
Yeah.
I love
Well,
that.
it's like with that, with electronic music, it was like I felt like I could make anything sound like anything anyways. So I was like, why couldn't I apply that to the end process.
Yep.
And it was that same mindset. Like I can make anything sound like anything. Oh, you want it to sound like shit? Easy. Let's do it.
Nice. Yo, well, quick question. What was the job that you were working like in the interim? Like, but like while you were the job you were working while you were paying for your mastering gear and stuff. Like, what was that job?
Yeah. I was actually working at Target, like when I
Okay.
was like as one of those security guards. I was getting paid $10 an hour. This must I'm looking at what year it is. Must have been in like 2010.
Okay.
2010. I was making $10 an hour. I ended up promoting there like
Mhm.
7 times or something, and I ended up like getting into like I went back to college and all that, and like I started like doing the corporate thing there.
Mhm.
Um, so I had like done a bunch of jobs um, around there, and eventually like ended up in distribution. But like all of that time, I wasn't like stacking up money. Like I was taking all that money, like I was saying, and I was like reinvesting it back into what I wanted to do.
Yep.
Um, until the time it
Yeah, you took.
until the time came where it was like, okay, I think that it's time to leave and do this full time.
Nice, nice. And was that because you were just getting so many mastering gigs that it was starting to balance out for you already, or did you just have to leap out on some faith at that point?
It was both. I remember I had this old boss, and he was like my favorite boss that I've ever had, like working for anyone. And he just like was such a fan of like the work that I was doing there for him, you know?
Yeah.
And he like called me into his office one day and he's like, "Yeah, what's happening with you?" And I was like, it was like that day when he called me into his office, I was like, "Yeah, I think I'm gonna put in my 2 weeks. I think this is it."
He could
Like,
feel
because I found like I realized like I'm putting all of my effort now. Like I put all my eggs into the mastering basket.
it. Yeah.
So I just left and was really worried. Um, yeah, there were some weird times, but it's so far has worked out.
Okay. Nice, nice, man. I mean, so far. I don't think you can go. You came too far to go back now. I'll tell you that.
Yeah, yeah, that's for sure. And I also like probably could not work for anyone else ever again. I just I'm not good at
Yeah.
being told what to do.
Roger that, man. Uh, but even though you kind of every project that you're doing, you're kind of having micro bosses along the way as a
Yeah,
master.
yeah, but still, I feel like I feel like I've like garnered enough respect to like where they're like, "What do you think about this?"
Mhm.
And come to me for my opinion rather than like,
Yes,
"Hey, do this, do it this way."
awesome. That's a
It
beautiful.
feels more respectful. It feels more mutually beneficial than it is like one sided. Like, "Hey, do this right now."
Yeah, because that can definitely be a lot of that as you starting off.
Hmm.
For sure. Okay, so a huge part of why I love the Wavy Seals Elite and what we do here is because a lot of us are self-taught, right? And we might be in our cities, in our home studios, in our project studios, whatever, and reading a book or learning online, or even some of us might have went to school, but I feel like a big missing component and something that helped me was having mentors, right? Having people who had already had some success in the industry kind of teach me and guide me along the way, especially as I was coming up through quad. And even nowadays I have people that I can lean on and tap into the industry. Do you have any mentors like that? And if so, like, who are they and what do they mean to you?
Um, I don't know about mentors, but I do have like a lot of peers who I lean on for like I guess emotional support in
Okay.
the industry because like
Hmm.
even though we're all in business for ourselves and we all have our own different like businesses on paper,
Right.
I feel like my team is like I have a big team that's external to my business. And for me it's a lot of the mixing engineers that I work with that are like I feel like are we're all part of the same team, and like I lean on them a lot for like support on how to get through certain things. It's like I've been going through things. Sorry, these I'm seeing files being sent in that I'm supposed to supposed to be mastering.
Yep.
Um, I lean on them for things that like I'm not sure how to handle, you know, or for experiences that I'm having that are new, that I've never dealt with before, because you know, like I'm as as much as social media might make it seem like we all have everything together, like I very much so am figuring this out. And um, with what I was talking about earlier, like I'm trying to constantly improve my product and my business and
Yeah.
my internal team here. You know, the assistants, the Atmos engineers,
Mhm.
our operations manager. Like I need help and support getting through situations because like it is like there is a lot of ambiguity in the music industry
Mhm.
and no one tells you anything about, all right, this is how you deliver files, this is how you invoice, this is where you should price yourself at. Okay, they wanted to use a different engineer's master, what do you do in this case? You
Yeah.
know, do I bill for it, do I, you know?
Mhm.
And so all those things like I've kind of picked up along the way, just using other people as a support group.
Okay, nice. I mean, yeah. So that's a great, perfect answer there. You know, you have, you know, a mentorship. Like sometimes, like I have mentors that they don't know that I'm their student. You know, I feel like even like a Bob Katz was probably one of your mentors because you read this book and you
Hmm.
learned a lot about it. So just using their wisdom and to help you, you know, learn faster and get to where you need to go to faster, is that to me that's mentorship for sure.
Yeah. And the cool thing about like recorded music
Mhm.
is the blueprint is already out there. Like you can download these master, like you can go on hdtracks.com
Mhm.
and download high res masters and like analyze them in your own studio, you know?
Yeah.
So there's a blueprint already out there for us. Like I don't need to go ask anyone questions. I just need to like bring that into my studio and listen in my studio and be like, huh, okay, let me try to like mimic this sound. Or like sometimes I'll even like gain stage one of those files down and like see if I can make it sound better.
Hmm.
Not much these days, but like it's just something to do. Like the blueprint's there. You don't have to go ask Dr. Dre. His files are online. You can go download them, you know?
Yeah, absolutely. And what website did you say that was again? I better take
hdtracks.com.
hdtracks.com. Make sure y'all
Yeah,
take note
I
of
am not endorsing them. I'm just saying this is what I have done.
that. Hey, look, listen, we want the hacks.
Mhm.
What's the quickest way to get from point A to point B? And that's a great point right there. Is the analyzing, kind of reverse engineering. I see that that's a pattern with you. Like you like to do the reverse engineering to figure out how they got to where they got to.
Yep, exactly.
Nice. Okay, so your accolades, man. Like I was saying earlier, you've worked with so many people from Kendrick Lamar, Baby King, the Baby, SZA, Isaiah Rashad, J. Cole, even. What are you currently in the process of working on, and what might be on the horizon, like up next?
Um, I mean, I don't think I could really talk about what I'm working on right now, just because it's, you know, that's the easiest way for me to lose future jobs.
Understood. Understood. What
But
about the most recent releases? We should say.
yeah, I'm really heavily into that new Jid album. I'm really heavily into the new Larry June. Those are two albums that just dropped that I think are like worth listening to, and it makes that actually brings up a good point that's related to our last question. Todd Cooper, who's the mix engineer for Larry June, is an old friend of mine, and he actually went to Expressions College in Emeryville. It was like one of the bigger music schools in the United States.
Hmm.
And him and I had a conversation a lot of years ago where I was like, man, should I go to this school? And I was like having him mix my projects. And he's like, bro, I don't think you need to go to this school. You already like have these things down. Like, don't spend your money going there. Just like do what you're already doing.
Yeah.
Um, sorry, that was a
No,
little bit of a tangent.
that I listen. I'm all about that because, like, if you don't have to, if you don't need to, school is not for everybody. And obviously, you prove that you're the living proof that you can learn this and be at the highest level without ever going to any official training. Right?
Mhm.
It's not about that. If you know what you're doing in this industry, that's what matters. The results.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Um, sorry, that was a little tangent. But yeah, I really like those albums. I really like all the Keem stuff, the Money Long stuff.
Hmm.
I think that was one of the wild cards of my career that I didn't expect. Like, it was an independent project. We did it. I did it at the same time I was told that I wasn't going to be doing Summer Walker's sophomore album,
Hmm.
and so I was like a little bit like, I'm bummed out. I felt like I had missed out on a job that, like, I really wanted to do that album.
Yeah.
But at the same time, like the exact same time, um, Prizzy hit me up to do this Money Long project, and it was just independent. And it went from, this, it was seemingly random independent project to being like the Hours and Hours record, being the number one R&B song in the country, top of the Apple Music charts, top of the,
Yes.
just
Oh,
totally independent.
nice, man. So I see that you get a lot of these kind of hip hop R&B jobs. And is there a desire of you to like branch out into other genres of music, or do you work on other genres much, or is that your thing?
Well, like I'm saying, I've like, my background is EDM and
Yeah.
dance, and like I want to do more pop stuff.
Yeah.
But I don't decide who hires me.
Right.
If
um
I had the decision, I would be doing like Calvin Harris's stuff, that kind of
yep,
stuff. But
got you.
I don't decide.
Absolutely. Now, how I want to just talk a little bit about those relationships. Like, how are you getting these gigs? Is it because I know you're San Francisco based? Is it because like you grew up in this optimal area where you have these connections? Is it because you went to these network events and met people? How are you able to book these gigs?
Well, I'd say like to say that I like pulled myself up by my bootstraps and all that bullshit would be kind of a lie, because I went to school with, um there's three people I went to high school with in the Bay Area,
Mhm.
who, and like, we've all been, we've always been in touch. We've always been friends, for 20 years. And those guys, when they went down to LA, they put me in rooms that I was not physically in. So they were like, "Hey, let's send this mix to this guy, and let him do it." And they were the ones who got me those opportunities to get into the room. Now,
Mhm.
um, to give myself credit, like, I did have to shoot out with a lot of, Grammy award winning, highly accoladed mastering engineers
Okay.
to get those jobs. But like, if it weren't for those opportunities, like if I didn't have the opportunity to do a shootout and have them and the artist pick A or B master, I would not be where I am today.
Okay.
Um, with that though, like, once I was in the door and like had a couple of bigger projects under my belt, I did something that a lot of I didn't see a lot of, established mastering engineers doing,
Mhm.
and it was building relationships virtually and networking virtually. And like, I'm a millennial, bro. Like, I grew up in Silicon Valley. Like, in seventh grade, we were like building websites. Like, there is no difference to me. Like, if you and I were here in person,
Yeah.
like, it wouldn't be different than you and I here talking on Zoom. Like, I treat this as like the same. This virtual experience is like almost the same exact thing for me.
Yeah.
So during the pandemic, I actually leveraged staying at home all the time to like, I'm gonna reach out and like build this network of people, by just reaching out. Hey, like, and not like, not so directly like people do in my DMs are like, "Hey, I got beats to send to Roddy Ricch." What's your email? You know, because I see that shit all day in my DMs.
And then that doesn't work. Does that work, by the way? Or no?
Never has ever worked. But one of the things I was doing was I would see people talking about like mixing an album or like working on an album or recording an album, and I would ask them. All I would do is ask them, "Hey, who's mastering them?"
Mm-hmm.
And it would spark this conversation. I didn't say, "Hey, let me master that." I would just ask them, like, "Hey, who is doing that?" And it would like spark a conversation, and either I would end up mastering it or I wouldn't. But either way, it helped spark a conversation that was like more natural, of like, hey, let's talk about, have you thought this far ahead in the project, you know?
Yeah, that's brilliant.
Yeah, and it helped me during the pandemic, and those relationships that I forged during the pandemic have led to kind of like my entire network, and some like trickle over networking to the other engineers that work here. So
Okay, nice. So let's talk a little bit about some tech stuff.
yeah.
Some studio essentials. Like what kind of gear is essential for mastering? You know, I'm talking hardware, what software, what plugins. If I was to start a mastering studio today, what would be like the top things I need to invest in?
Here, let me turn this around.
Ah, yeah, it's getting good.
Yeah. Okay, how's this? Can you see this?
Yep.
Okay, so here's my exact rig. Let's start at the Hilo. So the Hilo, this thing is my actual this is just a sound card at this point. All it does is transmit digital audio to the Crane Song. The Crane Song is doing all my digital to analog and analog to digital. It's also what I'm using as my word clock.
Okay.
And the reason I'm using this, the head quantum, as my word clock and my converters, is because this is the most advanced. This is the most precise DA and AD ever measured. It's like less than half a picosecond of jitter on the way back in. And if you look at any like frequency charts, like they have them all over the manual. But basically what that allows me to do is it allows me to drive my low end a little bit harder in analog without it distorting. And I'm saying, when I say a little bit harder, I'm talking like maybe 0.1 dB than if I were to use any other comparable converters.
Okay.
So I really like it. I also really like the DSP on here. I could turn the DSP on and off. I'm a big fan of this tape. It kind of rounds out the peaks and makes the low end and mid range drive harder. Here I have the Crookwood mastering console, and this is like, it's a custom unit. I've requested these 4 different panels. It is a monitor controller. It's an analog insert switcher. So what that means is like, it's basically like a mixer window inside your DAW. I can route any of my pieces of gear in any order just by clicking these buttons.
Okay. So
right now I have the positions locked. Sorry, what was that?
Is it kind of like a digital patch bay happening or what?
Yeah, it's a digital patch bay, but there's no patching involved. I just hit the button. Okay, I'm turning my limiter off. Okay, I'm turning it on, and it goes. It's routed in this sequence based on, you know, what number is assigned to the piece of gear. The other cool thing about this monitor controller is I have complete control over my speakers. So I can mono the left, I can mono the right speaker, I could sum to mono, I could hear the mono difference. So you've heard a lot about summing to mono, but this button actually allows me to hear only the side information, which is really good for like carving out frequencies and just like nasty, like comb phasey type of stuff. It also allows me to swap left and right. This is my favorite thing, because sometimes I'm like, man, am I going deaf in my left ear? and then I'll swap it and I'll be like, nope, the instrument is just panned like that,
Got you.
because the stereo image in here is kind of crazy. Like, you sit in front of these two speakers. I had one of my friends sit here the other day, and he was like, "Do you have a center speaker?" And I was like, "No, that you're hearing like this crazy stereo image." So it's important that I have this like swap left and right.
Nice.
The phase buttons, I can cut the left channel, the right channel, all that. It's just total control over my whole system. And then right here, I have the mid side codec, so I can basically make any one of my analog pieces of gear into a mid side piece of gear. So I can, yeah, it's crazy how it works. Like, I don't typically do that, but I can basically just use, say I want to use just this EQ in mono. Like, I can choose just to use it in mono processing with this MS codec.
So all the gear is routed to this Crockwood console, and then from there you control everything.
Yeah, this is the brain. That's the control unit. These are the actual brains. There's two of these.
Got you.
Then I have the Portico. This thing has not been in use in 2022. I don't know if I like it anymore. To be completely honest, it kind of slows down my transients, and I've been trying to get faster and faster and faster sounding transients, and that thing is not helping. I have the Better Maker mastering limiter. This thing is amazing. The NIF Soma. This is like considered the Ferrari of EQs. It's a really, really nice piece of gear. I have no idea why this is even set like this. I would never even do that. But yeah, it's a really fun piece of gear. But since it is tube based, it can also slow my transients or change the shape. So I use it very surgically, and I do a lot of like vocal shelving with it when vocals are just way too tucked. Yeah. What else do I have? So the tube vitalizer, the SPL tube vitalizer. This is a super cool piece of gear. I don't know if you could see in here, but my tubes have they're custom tubes, and they have microphonic dampeners on each tube, which disperses heat in a way that allows me to drive this a little bit harder without getting distortion. So you can see like a common theme in my analog setup. It's like, I'm trying to be able to drive everything a little bit harder with a little bit less distortion, and that those custom tubes and the microphonic devices in there help.
Nice.
And then my favorite EQ, made by my favorite company in the mastering world, Golly. This is the Porter Grinder EQ, and it is so clean and so transparent. The first time I used it, I was like pissed, because I was like, this isn't doing anything. And then I hit the bypass button. Yeah. And I was like, oh, holy shit, it is doing it. But like, it's so transparent that you can't even tell that it's on, which is why I really like it. And then I have these. They are the dynamic shelving unit and the dynamic asymmetrical equalizer, and used together, they act as like analog dynamic EQs. Okay. What else do I have? The TC Electronic, you got to have that.
Yes, indeed.
And that's pretty much it.
But monitors, I see you got an Oculus back there. How does that help?
Hey man, if you love my YouTube channel, then you'll really love the Wavy Seals Elite. The Wavy Seals Elite is a membership group that offers you way more than you can get on YouTube. Not only do you get one-on-one communication with me at least once or twice a week through our live lessons, Q&As, but we also have multi-track practice sessions, 2-track practice sessions. I'll be bringing along other experts because I don't know everything. So every month we have monthly master classes where you get to learn from an expert in the field. We give each other feedback on mixes and help each other problem solve issues in the studio. As a member of the Wavy Seals Elite, you'll also get access to an amazing community of audio engineers and producers who are all learning and building with each other. There's 2 membership opportunities for the Wavy Seals Elite. You can choose monthly or annual membership. If you're ready to take your skills to the next level and really grow your career in audio production, the Wavy Seals Elite is what you're looking for.
Oh no, that's the headphones.
Oh,
The
those are,
AirPods.
okay. Got you.
Yeah.
Reference. What are you monitoring on?
I'm monitoring on. Let me see if I can. Oops.
Okay.
These Tyler Acoustic D1Xs. I'm 6'3".
Damn.
So if you can see how tall those are.
Yeah. You probably
they-
the tallest mastering engineer I know.
I try. You got to be different.
Yep.
But yeah, that's pretty much it.
That's awesome, man. Thank you for sharing that.
The plants.
The plants.
You got to get the plants. You got to get good oxygen in the studio.
Yes. Did you design the treatment in that room?
Yeah, I designed everything.
Okay. And did you is this all based off your knowledge that you got from that studio design book? Or what?
Yeah, I mean, I built a lot of studios.
Okay.
Yeah, and this was like the latest rendition based off all the math from that book and from other sources.
Mm-hmm.
So I got the math down first. The math is the hardest thing to get down, and like getting the room dimensions right. So when we made the room, this is like, I forget what the ratio is, but it's like, I think it's a Loudon ratio. Okay. And it's an acoustically perfect room. Like the shape of it is acoustically perfect with treatment. I still need treatment.
Nice. Beautiful, man. I was thinking about getting into mastering, and then you just showed me that studio, and yeah, I'm gonna have to go and pick up another job or something.
I mean, you don't have to spend a ton of money to do it. Like the Tylers aren't expensive, and if you put a Barefoot or a Focal logo on them, they would sell for like 100,000. They're like 7,000 a pair or something.
Okay. Okay. Now, what about in the box? Have you ever done a mastering in the box? Are you opposed to that, or is that something that you've explored before?
Yeah, I've done masters in the box. It's possible. And when I was really like getting into doing it, the reason I was getting into doing it was to see if it could be done, because I was like watching other mastering engineers like travel the globe and do mastering on headphones and mastering in hotel rooms. I'm like, man, that seems like a pretty sweet life.
Right.
But while I was doing that, I really think that I found the strengths of digital and I found the strengths of analog. And like my newest iteration of my process is a combination of both. Like I cannot get the sound that I'm getting with just analog. I cannot get the sound that I'm getting with just digital. They both do some things really well and some things not so well.
Okay. In your opinion, what do you think is, the strengths and weaknesses of analog versus digital?
The biggest thing is the stereo width. Mm-hmm. So I cannot get the width and the depth that I get going into analog just in digital. Like I've tried to emulate it, but there's just something about the tubes that make it magical. There's something about how this better maker can decouple the mid and the side channels that make it better. Like it just, my chain in particular just does something to give it to just make it feel so 3D that I haven't been able to replicate in the box.
Okay. Yeah. And then the plus sides of the box.
The plus sides of the box are that transients are really, really fast. Like using digital limiters, like digital compressors, like you can really, you have so much granular control over like the attack and release settings that you can make things sound extremely punchy and do a lot of kind of limiting. and the other part is that you lose you're able to lose detail in digital, whereas like I feel like in analog it kind of brings out a lot of detail,
Yeah.
but sometimes you don't want all the detail to be brought out, and it happens sometimes with some of the mixers that I work with where they're like, hey, why does this sound like this at this section?
Mm-hmm.
And I'm like, well, listen to your mix, that's what it sounds like. And they're like, oh, well, I wasn't really hearing that in my limited ref. And so like I'll go use an L2 on it and it'll kind of shave off some of those details. And they'll be like, oh yeah, this sounds perfect, you know?
Yeah.
So
Okay. So what are like give me like 3 go-to plugins that help you in the mix. I sound like you said one of them, an L2. I mean in the mastering process.
yeah, I don't use the L2 as much anymore.
Mm.
But 3 things I couldn't live without. So I really like this BX. Do you want me to share my screen?
Please, that would be great.
Yeah. Okay, I really like this Brainworks BX XL2. This is usually my first limiter coming back in from analog,
Mm-hmm.
and the reason why it's so amazing is because I can center the bass after it's run through my analog gear. So remember when I was talking about analog just giving this width and this depth, um, the con of that is sometimes because of the randomness of the tubes, or the randomness of like how the compressor is operating based on whatever variable there is, the heat of the room, anything affects the analog gear, you know. The bass can be like a little bit off, like not off, but it could be a little bit lopsided to where it like kind of is a little bit louder on the left or kind of a little bit louder on the right, you know.
Yeah.
And this thing helps me a lot to center the bass
Okay.
down here so I can make this mono after I'm coming in analog, which is a huge plus. I like all this XL stuff, so I'm really big in like having a huge low end. Like I don't really care like if some of my masters sound quieter, as long as when they come out like that low end is just slapping. It's a Bay Area thing.
Yes.
I really like the XL knob, and I don't really use much else in here except for this crossover. I'll try to like adjust this crossover in some songs, and then the master out. Like I always gain stage all of my limiters.
Okay.
The other thing I really like is this newfangled. There's a lot of transient design in here, but this is like one of the most advanced. Like mastering is like the jazz musician of engineering. That's how I that's how I look at it. Like it gets way too complex for no fucking reason other than to just get complex. And this is one of those like jazz musician type of limiters where it's like I have so much control, not only like the gain reduction, but what bands.
Right now.
Have you seen this thing?
Nah, never. I'm like, this is insane.
Yeah, it is insane. So like when you start to use it, you can see, let me see if I can get it to start doing stuff. You could see the gain reduction happening per channel. And so what this is doing is it's applying up to 5.9 dB of gain per band, per frequency band. So the limiting on it comes out super, super transparent. Wow. Because some bands are being limited harder than other bands. So you could see this, there's kind of a glitch happening here. But this 102 hertz band, it looks like it's showing where this is operating right here. So this 102 hertz band is being limited a little bit harder here to let everything else breathe a little bit more. So I really like this. It has a ton of unique transient design. So you can see how this is, it's kind of coloring in transients for these specific bands. And I think the reason I have it like, well, you'll hear why I have it like this when you hear the master. But just a ton of control over transients. And then I have this clipper. It's not in use on this record, but you can really drive the saturation up. If there's a lot of like top end information. This sounds more transparent. If there's not a lot of top end information, it's all low end, you'll definitely hear the distortion and it can sound kind of ugly. But it's a great tool. That's the second limiter. And then this last one, ozone, there's something about the broad spectrum limiting of the ozone that just sounds so detailed to me. And if I want to get rid of the details, I'll use it in this IRC1 mode.
Yeah.
If I want to bring out a little bit more details, I'll use it in this modern mode. And this mode is the highest CPU draining, but it sounds the best in my opinion. And it's the crisp, the IRC3 crisp.
Okay.
Fastest transients, punchiest kicks, snares. I use this one possible. But sometimes it calls for this. This master it called for this because of the 808.
Nice. That's the one plugin that I do have. And I'm sure most of us we've seen this one. All right, we're getting back to something manageable for the common mixer.
Yeah, no, I mean all these are this one is relatively inexpensive too. It's the newfangled. It's the Eventide, right? Eventide. I think that's who makes it.
Okay. Dope.
Eventide. I don't know how you say that.
Yeah, I would normally say Eventide, but hey, who knows?
Tomato, tomato. I don't know.
Exactly. But since we are here, let's go ahead and dive off into your demonstration portion of everything. While we already got the screen sharing, if you ready to jump off into that. Awesome, man.
That's it.
Dope. Thank you so much for sharing that. I have just one more question for you. Let's you can stop the screen share whenever you're ready.
Oh yeah.
One more question before we open up to a Q&A from me. Actually, I got two more questions. What you talked a little bit about your ideology behind mastering. Like, can you kind of just sum that up for us a little bit? Like, what does being a mastering engineer mean to you, and what do you feel like is your job when you get a song to master?
I mean, I think these days it's like really giving my opinion of how I think it should sound. It's like, so even the bigger mixers will like be like, hey, what does this sound like? Or I'll like master it and be like, hey, the vocal might need to come up a couple dB, and then they'll chew on it and they'll set. And like the cool thing about my relationships with the mixing engineer is sometimes I'll say something like that and they'll be like, no, it's not the vocal that needs to come up, it's the 808 that needs to come down 2 dB to let the vocal be in the right place. So I'm like almost giving feedback to like get them to think more about it rather than like tell them exactly what to do, what I think they should do. So that's my philosophy working with them. And then the other thing is obviously like what I was saying earlier, like I'm going for maximum repeatability and replayability. A lot of times, especially with what I see on social media these days, is people like post the picture of their luffs. They're like, oh shit, 6 luffs. Like, I got it. Like, this is it. But then you hear it and you're like, it's fucking not dynamic. It sounds like shit. It's all top end, Yeah. And like, I'm going to listen to it once and I may never listen to the song again. We need to be loud enough to be competitive, but also like, I don't want to like compromise quality to get the loudness. And I think there's like there's some maturity there to be like, all right, do I totally change this mix and make it not sound as good, or do I make it sound as good as it's going to be? It may be quieter, than the number one song on the radio right now, but it's the best that's going to sound where it's at. And so that's really what I want to do. I want to make things sound as best as they possibly can, and not live in this just unrealistic fantasy to where every song is going to sound like something else, or where every song can sound like something else.
Mhm.
Sometimes artists are like, I want it to sound as loud as this, but they'll produce it in a key that's like 5 semitones down from that other record, making it literally unable to be as loud just because the entire song lives down here, whereas that other song may live up here, whereas like more mid-range, more top end, just musically, like when it comes down to like instrumentation.
Mhm.
So I try not to compare and make everything sound as best as it's supposed to sound. I don't like references or anything like that anymore these days. It's not to say you can't like learn from references and that type of stuff. It's just I want to make new stuff and do new experiments and make things sound new and not like they've ever sounded before. And I feel like with music, um, that's what we got to do. Like to stand out, you have to be different.
Absolutely, great answer. My last question to you is, a lot of mixers nowadays are mastering their own stuff. What's your thoughts or advice on actually using a separate mastering engineer for your projects?
I mean, I got into mastering to master my own stuff. So I don't think it's like impossible to do. But I also understand the benefits of like collaboration and not operating in a silo. And I
Mhm.
can get really into a mix to the point where I lose sight of what is objective. And usually, if I've mixed it, like by the end of the mix, I have lost sight of what is, if I've done the mix right, like I've lost sight of what is objective. So when I'm hearing it, I'm like focused on the things that I want to hear rather than the audience's first listen, which is what everyone else experiences.
Mhm.
So the most important decisions that I make as a mastering engineer are made like literally my first listen, where I'm like, ooh, that sounds like the vocals sound too present, or like the reverb is like way too loud, or whatever I'm hearing my first time through is the most important. And that's why I would hire a mastering engineer, because like I want to get an objective perspective on my mix.
That makes all the sense in the world. Thank you so much for sharing that. That was a perfect. Everything was great, great demonstration. Thank you so much, Nick.
Yeah,
So
thank you.
I mean depth. Let's open up the floor now. Everybody, all the Wavy Seals Elite, feel free to turn on your camera, and if you have a question for my man Depp here, listen, let me see your hand. I'm gonna call on a few of you. Everybody, I know we're not gonna get a chance to get to everybody, but I'm gonna try to get as many people as possible. Let's start with Duran, and then we'll go to Fat Daddy.
Hey man, if you love my YouTube channel, then you'll really love the Wavy Seals Elite. The Wavy Seals Elite is a membership group that offers you way more than you can get on YouTube. Not only do you get one-on-one communication with me at least once or twice a week through our live lessons, Q&As, but we also have multi-track practice sessions, 2-track practice sessions. I'll be bringing along other experts because I don't know everything. So every month we have monthly master classes where you get to learn from an expert in the field. We give each other feedback on mixes and help each other problem solve issues in the studio. As a member of the Wavy Seals Elite, you'll also get access to an amazing community of audio engineers and producers who are all learning and building with each other. There's 2 membership opportunities for the Wavy Seals Elite. You can choose monthly or annual membership. If you're ready to take your skills to the next level and really grow your career in audio production, the Wavy Seals Elite is what you're looking for.
What's going on, Nick?
What's up, Duran? How you doing, man?
Good, good. As I'm popping everybody, or as I'm clear this time?
No, you clear this time. You
Okay,
reverb and
okay,
everything.
okay, cool. When you master like a whole album, how long does it take you to master like a whole album, like you did with the what's his name, not Roddy Ricch, but the other cat, yeah,
Jid?
Jid.
yeah.
Both of those were similar. The situation was very similar, where the A&R at the record label was like, hey, we need this tomorrow.
Ooh,
So both of those albums were done in 2 days.
wow,
Yeah.
wow.
Ideally, I would like as much time as I could get, like on Baby Keem's album and Isaiah Rashad's albums. I got a lot of time, and those ones turned out like, I
More
mean, they all
fun.
turn out like, yeah, they turn out great, but the cohesion of Isaiah Rashad's album, like it damn near sounds like you can't go to the next song and be like, oh, this sounds out of place, you know. So that's why I like having a lot of
That
time.
was his song mixed in the same studio, or was it like different studios? His album was
Oh
mixed.
yeah, no, they're all different studios.
Oh, okay, and you got it to sound nice. That's
Oh,
nice.
you mean did I master it in the same studio?
No, did his all his songs were they mixed in different studios? Were they recorded in different studios, like different?
Oh yeah, I mean most the artists these days are just recording everywhere.
Yeah, okay.
Yeah, you see the baby in the kitchen and shit. He's got his engineer in the living room, in the hotel,
Yeah,
wherever.
yeah, okay.
They're just all so busy, you know. Like you got to, whenever the flow is right, that's when it happens, I guess.
Okay, cool.
All right, cool. Let's go to Eric. Thank you for that question, Duran. That was a good question. To know that, you had
Hold
to
on,
mix those the next day. That was insane.
I'm getting a call. I don't know if it's affecting anything here.
Can
uh,
you get me? Can you guys hear me?
yep, we can still hear you, and we can hear you as well, Nick.
Kaizen,
Okay.
I like that shirt.
Oh yeah, it's funny. I didn't know. I mean, you said the constant improvement, and I was like, wow, I'm wearing the shirt, which is great. I
Kaizen,
just want to tell you
Kaizen.
really quickly. I'm a friend of Dr. Bob and Bill, Bill Wilson also, and
Oh, nice.
and the whole Batman thing is all in Jungian psychology, and he wrote the forward. So yeah, I was digging that too, man. Um, so hey, really quickly. So I'm 57 years old. I come up in the rock world, played with a lot of big artists, did pretty well. And then I burnt out on it, not in a way that I didn't want to do it, but I just got bored. Now I heard you saying you want to do more pop. I'm trying to get into a different portion of the game. And I guess like this is, you talked about mentors or encouragement. Like someday, I don't want to quit. I'm never going to quit. You talked about being fearless as well as generous. And I think you said honest. I'll work on that one. Anyway, but like I need things to hold on to at my age to keep going, try and get into newer music and just turn that corner where I'm back in the game. Some days it seems impossible, but I just don't have quit in me. Anything you could say to that?
Um, is that like, are you asking like, what would I do if?
When you said that you like to make things new and you like to, you want, you'd like to be doing more, maybe a little more pop or whatever. Like, what do you hold on to as you go forward, as things change? Because things change even in your
Mm,
lifetime, even though you're young and me, things change. What keeps you going when it looks like you're at that turn where it's not,
like a
you know,
plateau, like
like a
when I
plateau?
feel like
Yeah.
I've reached a plateau or something.
And what's next? That like, how do you focus on staying in the game, moving forward?
Um, I don't know. That's a good question. I think maybe it does come down like again to just reading. And I'm just an avid reader of anything like technological or like musical or anything like that. So I'm like super subscribed to I have all these Billboard magazines and that kind of stuff.
Right.
But like I look for like what are the trends and what is happening outside of my studio. And like right now the big one in engineering is Atmos. Like Atmos is everywhere. Every record label is requiring Atmos. um i've I've done stereo for so long, like that's like the next progression. So we've been dabbling in Atmos. I have a partner, Brennan Duffy, who I do Atmos mastering and different things with. But I also outside this room have um, I don't know how many speakers it is. I think it's 15 of these Tyler speakers. So that's what I'm holding on to. I like being able to have myself be challenged, so this will be the next thing. And the other cool thing is with this room, like I'm going to be getting out of my comfort zone in the stereo space to like upgrade my room into this new format. As far as like something I did, and I'm not trying to like date you or anything like that, but like with my dad, the other day. Like he's like older now, right? And like he's the same way. He's never gonna quit. And like I don't, I don't want him to. But I had this algorithm on the title playlist, and we were like listening to his old, like his old music, and like newer shit was coming on that he was like really enjoying, you know. So like I would just say, just tap it into whatever, like almost like a hybrid of like mixing the old with the new, if that.
100%. Thank you so much. And hey, what edition of that book? The mastering. You have the latest edition of the book by what's his name?
Bobcats. Yeah.
Yeah, Bobcat. Latest version. Okay, I'm getting that. Thank you so much for your time. Sorry I took so long on that question, guys.
No, thank you.
All right. Who else had a question? No. Who was next? Oh, Big Ben. Big Ben. Go ahead.
Hey, what's up, Nick?
Hey, what's up, man? How you doing?
Chilling. That's kind of had a question about like when you're mastering and you're sending it off to the client, are they asking for different deliverables like in volumes? Because I know that like Apple and Spotify have two different like readings or whatever. Like
Yeah. No, we just deliver one master. Like,
okay,
yeah, it should be optimized for everything. But the reason why we only deliver one, and there's a really good thread on Gearspace, it's like pinned to the top of the mastering forum on Gearspace of mastering for different streaming platforms, like why you should not like have all these different masters, is because it's a moving target. Like
right.
the one thing that is for sure is that Apple and Amazon Music and Spotify are going to change their loudness normalization codecs all the time based on
Right.
whatever their interests are. And my job is to maximize the format that we deliver in right now, which is the wave, So I want to get the most maximized wave that I could deliver so that in the archives, in the record label's archives, it could live on for as long as it needs to live on,
Gotcha.
And despite what any DSP decides to do with that wave file afterward, like I just want to make it, I just basically don't want my stuff to be remastered,
Right.
You see all these remasters, like I don't want any of my stuff to like ever be remastered. I know it'll probably happen, it's inherent in the progression of anything technology, but like I want it to be as timeless as possible. So that one master should be the best that it's going to be and live throughout time, in my opinion.
And then I had a question as well about like what you feel about mastering in Dolby, like what the experience been like. Has it been a little bit more challenging, or is it something that like are the requirements different, or is it something that you?
It's the same philosophy. Like, although there are broadcast requirements, like similar to like the film industry, we're like delivering it at -18 LUFS and that type of thing. It's still like the theory is all there. Like we have these digital limitations in stereo as well. It's just like taking what's already been there and applying it to this new format. And also just really being open-minded to what the possibilities are. Because
Right.
like now with this scalable format, like there are so many more possibilities, so many more variables. In mastering, I want to have that same open-mindedness to where it's like, okay, how do I approach this with like, how far can I take this? How far can this go? And the cool thing about the Atmos stuff is that I'm not sure anyone has 10,000 hours right now.
Right.
It's too new. No one has those 10,000 hours. So the playing field has been leveled to an extent to where it's like you see some of these engineers that you never heard of yesterday, like doing the biggest records out in Atmos.
Yep.
And guess why? Because they were first movers. They did it first. They're the ones like that are going to hit that 10,000 hours first before anyone else,
Right.
So,
Yeah. No, thank you very much.
yeah, for sure. Good questions.
Good question, Ben. Goat, did you have a question? All right, go ahead.
Yeah, I did. Am I too loud?
Nah, you good, man.
Okay, cool. I just wanted to ask, man. I know today that the plugins are really getting better than what they used to. I had seen something with Glenn Chick, and he was saying that he's to really master in the box.
It's kind of cutting out right now.
Yeah, like it's a lot of those are plug-in, like the knife and the and the better maker.
So go. We can't really hear
between
you that well.
here.
'Cause your audio's cutting in and out. I think you just got like a bad connection over there or something. But is it is it a question
Yeah.
about asking about mastering in the box and the plugins that would be used? I can't really. I think I lost.
I think I kind of understood that.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I like Glenn Chick. Me and Glenn talk all the time, actually. And we, he's one of those I feel like peers that I have in the industry that we can go back and forth and admire each other's work and that type of stuff. And his philosophy is just like what you're saying. Like he was one of the ones that I'm jealous of that like can go to Korea and master Future's album in a hotel room. Like that sounds amazing to me, but like I was saying, like I know the strengths and weaknesses from my experience, and like other people may be better at doing all in the box mastering than I am, and like I'm okay with that. Like I'm not I don't have like a crazy ego. I don't need to like be better than anyone else. But what I've found is that like there's like randomness in my analog stuff that like can almost never be replicated. Like the tubes, like I cannot use the tube vitalizer from any of the places that make the tube vitalizer and the plugin and replicate what's actually happening with the tubes. The Soma is the same thing. The NIF, they have that plugin and it does sound good. It's close, but like there's something about the tubes that just it makes it sound so much wider when you're actually using the piece of hardware. And I don't know, I honestly don't know if that's like a placebo effect or not. But like I cannot get the same sound without my small analog chain. It's just my thing. Like maybe Glenn can do it. Maybe Chris Geringer can do it. I don't know. I can't.
Good question. And good answer. Anybody else have a question? But yeah, let's see. Anybody else? I don't see.
I had a question.
Ahead, and then we'll take after this.
Okay, yeah, and I'm just kind of new to the mixing, and I'm just kind of getting the fundamentals and getting my mixes together. But since we're on mastering, what would be your like bullet points to try to get? Because I'm asking because I'm just I'm a nerd and I'm into this stuff, and so like it's not even really for profit per se for me. It's more so just to have the knowledge and try to make the best sounding music I could possibly make. And so what would you bullet point would be for a beginner to focus on when I feel like my mix is ready to just like to focus on to master that track?
Maybe I would almost think of it differently as like how would you mix right now so that you wouldn't need a mastering engineer? Like could you bring your mix to the level to where it's like I don't even think this needs to be mastered, and like work backwards from there? Because a lot of like I've gotten stuff from Manny to where it's like this shit damn near doesn't even need to be mastered, it's already at 0, it's already at super fucking loud, it's already super punchy, and I'm doing very very light work at the very end, so that's what I would start thinking of, like how do I get my mixes to sound how these records sound that I'm hearing on the radio or whatever. already before mastering.
Perfect. Great question.
Appreciate it.
Great question. Okay, I got time for one last question. If anybody
I
has.
think he's still talking.
Oh, did you have something else, Jerome, to add? No, I guess you good. All right. Anybody else? I think Duran got another question he want to ask if nobody else does. Go ahead, Duran.
When I don't do it too much when I do my mastering, and when when you boost in the mid, like on the mid side, like what are you trying to like achieve? Like you just does it based on a certain songs, like or do you just do it on like songs that need mid side? Cause I don't do it. I just make sure it's loud, clean, hitting.
I mean, it depends on what I'm being sent for sure. But I do like boosting the sides in the low mids. It's kind of my sound. It's like my sonic thumbprint. So I mean, it's a preference thing. I just like when things feel warm and like just are around you, if that makes sense. Not in like the top end, but like more like where
So
that
like
C2, C3 on the piano are, like that's where that's like where I like to play the piano too. That's where I like live
Okay.
when I'm like making music. And so I feel like that's what I want to hear when I'm mastering too. So I guess it is personal. It's your taste.
So you
It's
like to
whatever
be
your
warm
taste
and wide, like warm and wide when you do that.
warm and wide, yeah, but still tight. Like
Tight,
the
yeah.
sub has to be tight. The low end has to be tight, but I want those like low mids real quick.
Mids, yeah. Well, okay.
Yeah.
Oh, good point. Thank y'all for y'all questions, and definitely thank you, Depp, for joining us. This has been an eye-opening experience, and I've learned a lot. I always do whenever I tap in and have these kind of discussions. So I love just being able to have a real discussion with people at the top of their game, man. So I appreciate you taking the time out to share with us like 100%. The last thing I just want to get out you before we go is just word of advice. What would be that golden nugget that you would leave anyone that wants to follow in your career footsteps?
I mean, it's life advice too. Like, be scared and do it anyways. That's what I would say.
Yeah, that's beautiful.
Be scared and do it anyways.
Dope. I'm with all of that. Yo, thank you so much, Nick. It's been an absolute pleasure. I want to welcome you to be a honorary member of the Wavy Seals.
The Wavy Seals, dude. Yeah, I'll take any. Do I get like one of those general badges?
Absolutely. I'm gonna send you one of these shirts.
Nah.
Man. We're gonna start there. You the honorary general, man. So
No, I'm just kidding.
I was definitely you in. I'm gonna have you in there, man. So thank you so much. If please like shoot me your shipping info. I would love to get you one of these nice t-shirts, man. They real nice, So next time you watching your ultra marathon,
yeah, we'll do a trade.
Awesome. That sounds perfect. Cool, man. Yo, Wavy Seals Elite, we out of here. Nick, thank you so much. Everybody in the world, hope y'all learned from this. Make sure y'all take notes. We out.